There are moments in marriage when silence feels safer than truth. For the past 3 years, I lived between those moments, caught between what I said and what I couldn't. My name is Anaya. I've been married to Rayhan for 4 years. From the outside, we looked perfect. 2 people who smiled through family dinners, shared glances across crowded rooms, and always seemed to understand each other without words. But inside, I was carrying something that refused to stay hidden any longer. It began one quiet evening, just after sunset. The house was dimly lit, and the air carried the faint scent of sandalwood from the candle Rayhan had lit earlier. He was in the living room reading when I walked in. My hands trembled slightly. I had rehearsed this moment for months. "Rayhan," I said softly, my voice barely holding together. "I need to tell you something." He looked up immediately, his eyes warm but curious. "What is it, Anaya?" The words lodged in my throat. I had imagined him reacting in so many ways. Anger, silence, disbelief, but not this gentle patience that made it harder to speak. I took a slow breath. "I haven't been honest with you," I whispered. He put the book down, concern shifting across his face. "Honest about what?" My heart pounded, so loud I could hear it echo through my ribs. I wanted to run, to hide, but instead I looked at him and told the truth. Before we got married, I wasn't ready to let go of my past. He stared at me, still and quiet. I could feel the weight of the words settle between us. Rayhan had always trusted me without question. He believed in the kind of love that healed, that forgave before it understood. And I had loved him for that. But my secret wasn't about betrayal. It was about fear. "I used to write letters," I continued, "to someone I lost years ago. I never sent them, but I kept writing, even after we married. It was my way of saying goodbye to a version of myself I didn't understand yet." Rayhan's lips parted, then closed again. He leaned back slowly, processing every word. "Letters?" he asked quietly. "To whom?" "To someone who was once very close to me. Someone I thought I'd spend my life with before life changed everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. The candle flickered. The rain outside grew louder. He finally stood, walked to the window, and stared into the storm. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," I said, swallowing hard, "I found the last letter today, and I realized I never told you what it meant. I never told you how much of my heart you healed." He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Where is it?" I hesitated, then nodded toward the bedroom. "It's in the closet, in a small box on the top shelf." Without another word, Rayhan started walking toward the room. My breath caught. I followed him, unsure of what he would find or how he'd react once he did. When he opened the closet door, the scent of cedarwood filled the space. The little box sat there, fragile and innocent. He took it down, placed it on the floor, and knelt. I stood behind him, trembling. He opened it. Inside were folded pieces of yellowed paper, each written in my handwriting, years of emotions captured in ink. He picked one up and looked at me. "Can I read it?" I nodded, tears threatening to spill. He unfolded the letter. My words, written long ago, came alive in the quiet air. "Dear Adil, if you ever read this, know that I never stopped wishing you peace. Life moved on, and so did I, but some memories stay like old songs. They fade, yet never disappear." Rayhan exhaled slowly, folding the letter again. "Adil," he murmured. That was his name. I nodded. He placed the letter back and stood up. His face wasn't angry, just full of something deeper. Something I couldn't name. Then, without warning, he reached for my hand and gently pulled me into the closet with him. The space was small, dark, filled with the faint scent of his cologne and the quiet echo of our breathing. "Anaya," he said softly, "why do you think I'd be angry?" I looked up, confused. "Because I hid this from you. Because I wasn't brave enough to tell you sooner." He shook his head. "You think I don't understand loss? You think I've never written words I never sent." I blinked. "You wrote letters too?" He smiled faintly, the corners of his lips trembling. "To my mother, after she passed, every year on her birthday. I kept them hidden in my drawer. Maybe we're both haunted by the past in our own ways." He continued, "I didn't pull you in here to hide from the truth. I pulled you in so you could see that we all have spaces in our hearts that no one else enters until we invite them." Tears finally escaped down my face. I wanted to speak, but no words came. He reached for the box and handed it to me. "You don't need to burn these," he whispered. "But maybe you can write one last letter. To yourself this time." I stared at him, overwhelmed. "To myself?" "Yes," he said gently. "To the woman who survived loss, learned love, and still had the courage to tell me the truth tonight." In that moment, the closet didn't feel small anymore. It felt sacred, like a place where two souls met in raw honesty. I nodded, unable to speak, and placed the box back on the shelf. We stood there, not as husband and wife bound by perfection, but as two flawed hearts learning how to heal together. When we finally stepped out, the rain had stopped. The house smelled of wet earth and renewal. Rayhan poured 2 cups of tea and handed me one. "So," he said quietly, "will you write it?" "I will," I promised. "Tonight." Later that night, while Rayhan slept beside me, I sat by the window with a pen and blank paper. The city lights shimmered through raindrops, still clinging to the glass. I began to write. "Dear Anaya, you've spent years forgiving others. Maybe tonight is about forgiving yourself. You held on to memories not because you were weak, but because you didn't know how to let go. You thought love had to erase what came before, but maybe love just teaches us how to remember differently. Rayhan doesn't need your perfection. He just needs your truth. And now you've given him that." I paused, exhaled slowly, and looked at the man sleeping peacefully beside me. There was something unspoken between us now, something deeper than words. Sometimes, love isn't about promises whispered in the light. It's about forgiveness spoken in the dark. I folded the letter and placed it beside the old box in the closet. It felt like closing a chapter, not out of guilt, but gratitude. Days passed. Rayhan and I didn't talk much about that night, but something had shifted. He smiled more. I laughed without fear. We started cooking together again, dancing in the kitchen to songs we used to skip. One afternoon, as I was hanging laundry, I noticed the box on the table. Rayhan had opened it again. Inside, my old letters were gone, replaced with a single new one in his handwriting. Curious, I opened it. "Dear Anaya, I read every word you ever wrote, not to know your past, but to understand your heart. I realized that love isn't about being the first. It's about being the last to leave when things get hard. Thank you for trusting me with your truth. And if someday you ever feel lost again, remember this. Our closet isn't just a space to hide secrets. It's a place where honesty finds shelter." I pressed the paper against my chest, tears welling up again. It wasn't sorrow this time, it was peace. That night, I placed his letter beside mine. 2 stories written years apart, now side by side, proof that love doesn't erase what came before. It simply adds a new page.